And I mean, on the national level, the big issues, there have been opportunities for the Democrats to codify Roe v. Wade as the law of the land, but that didn't happen. There have been opportunities for the Republicans to do the exact same opposite. Of course, they don't want it resolved. If it's resolved, how are they going to get the pastors to be in their corner or the Catholic Church to be in their corner?
And I don't think that that's the way that Jesus even approached it. People were inspired and people were awakened to him, and that changed the way that they lived.
I don't think that the word Christian means anything anymore. The stats say there are 210 million people who call themselves Christians in this country. And I think if that were true, the country would look different. If Christianity meant anything, if saying I'm a Christian actually held any weight, the country would look different. The world would look different.
For sure, yeah.
But you're forcing them to do that. The problem never seems like a problem until the script is flipped. Because if somebody else prayed from a different religion in that room, all of the Christians would have a major problem with it. That would not have been allowed. And then that's when the Christian nationalism would come in and say, well, this is a Christian country. I just wish Obama would come back, personally.
Very evangelical and very conservative in my beliefs. I learned love then. My Christian beliefs have turned way more liberal, but what I learned as a very evangelical conservative Christian still applies.
I just think that forgiveness piece is something that we all can desperately use more of, particularly with the election coming up. We preach a lot about love, but love at its core is forgiveness at the same time.
Forgive well and forgive often. It's a hard lesson to practice because it is about your pride and it causes you to, in Joey's words, turn the other cheek.
Those are Jesus' words, but I'll take it.
Joey's words by way of Jesus.
I demanded, pleaded, called God on promises and was like, you have to show up or I am done. And he did. And he did.
That's something to really think about. What does it mean that the God of the universe loves me?
Are we saying that our God is bigger than their God or what?
Man, you got my mind going crazy right now.
I just think that is evangelical bullshit.
And I don't fit in their box anymore. So feeling rejected from the church makes me feel far away from God.
If I'm living out the love of God, love of the divine, then in some ways we're unoffendable.
It's wrong to marginalize anybody for any reason.
Sometimes we can just have some things about our perspective that's off until we encounter someone who can challenge our thoughts, have conversations with us, and we just continue to grow and evolve.
I'm with you there. Yeah, I like that.
That sounded like womp, 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 womp to Robbie.
I'm a hardcore gospel lover. I do love the gospel. I just think we get it wrong.
Girl, I was so highly medicated, I don't even know if you got Oh, I found my people.
Hey, Hayne.
Hey, Joey. How are you?
All right, Matt, while you have Robbie and Hayne on the screen at the same time, which one do you think is better looking?
Robbie.
Boom. For the listener, this is Joey's Let's Keep Matt at Full Mast episode.
Oh, my God.
Jesus Christ.
That's all Matt could say is the Nazarene's name.
I just think that Joey has a lot of very attractive friends. A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. The whole group. It's kind of wild.
That's funny, man. That's funny.
Oh,
hey,
goodness.
Hayne, I want to take this opportunity to ask you something that I've been forgetting to ask you on air, and I've wanted to save it on air. You have had to have seen the commercials of that fire blanket that is supposed to put out fires. You have not seen this?
No.
You haven't seen the fire blanket?
No, I haven't seen it. I don't watch a lot of TV.
Robbie, Matt, do y'all know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think I've seen those.
Yeah, so there's
I have.
Yeah, so there's a commercial where they downplay a fire extinguisher, and they are advertising this blanket that where you can just throw on any fire and it puts them out.
It works, but I'll tell you that scientifically that will work. So for fire to burn, this is just a quick little. This is my little science episode. For fire to burn, you have to have heat, you have to have fuel, and you have to have air,
oxygen.
Yeah, air. So if one of those is taken away, then the chemical reaction cannot continue. It stops.
Yeah.
So that's basically what a fire extinguisher does. So fire extinguishers, some have like a dry chemical. It's just removing air to put it out, but it's not taking the heat away. Water puts it out because water cools it. It takes the heat out.
Gotcha.
So a blanket works.
And the blanket's made of fiberglass.
That's kind of scary.
Is that scary?
Well, I just think that could be toxic, potentially. But that being said, you spray. I don't know if you guys have ever sprayed a dry chemical extinguisher before. It's nasty. It burns. It tastes terrible. So it's probably less toxic than using a dry chem. My preference, we actually had a fire in an Arby's 3 days ago. It was a small kitchen fire, but we use a CO, a carbon dioxide extinguisher. So it's just blowing just like just carbon dioxide. It removes the air, removes oxygen, and it puts it out just for a short time. Then you got to really like kind of knock it down, but it'll make the flame go away periodically because it kills that chemical reaction.
In really bad fires, most people don't die from the fire. They die from the smoke,
correct. Right? 80% of people that die in fires do not die from what we would say is flame impingement. They die from smoke inhalation. Yep.
Isn't that what happened to Jack from This Is Us?
I don't know. I don't watch a lot of TV.
Oh, hey, I'm with you. Robbie.
Wait.
That broke my heart.
Okay, I was about to say, somebody had to have seen that show.
Oh, yeah, This Is Us.
Okay, I was about to say.
Yeah. I didn't watch it all the way through, though. I may have to do that in about 7 years when Waylon graduates. That's my consume television time. What do y'all think is the worst way to go?
Well, I would think in terms of a slow death or
people say the worst way to go would be drowning or freezing to death.
I don't think so.
Being burned to death.
I think being burned would be worse because you're probably not going to die immediately, and you're going to be. Burns. You guys have all been burned. You burn your hand on the stove or whatever. Burns are the worst. So we just had a guy. I'll show you this picture. I'm proud of it. I'm really proud of my crew.
Where's this going? I'm proud of this picture. Let me show it to you.
Well, no, I think you guys.
Yeah.
So here we go. I'm going to hold it up. So last year in November, we had a fire in our district. We showed up. We were told by a bystander when we pulled in that there was somebody in that house. And we went in and we found him and we pulled him out. And he had 46% of his body was burned. He had to be medevaced to Augusta, Georgia. That's the closest advanced burn unit. There he is. That was a couple of weeks ago. We had a big ceremony and he's alive and he's doing really well. Going to make a full recovery. Wow. Yep. His name's Michael.
Nice.
Was he conscious when you found him or was
he was out.
Okay.
Yeah. He was, he had wedged himself in between, in his little bathroom, the toilet and the tub. And then a significant part of the ceiling had fallen on top of him. So he was like drywall on top of him. So when I went in there, I saw a mound and I started pulling drywall up and I could see his belt loops. I could see his belt line, his belt loops. So I grabbed him and I pulled him to the threshold of the door, yelled to my guys, "Hey, I've got somebody." And within 2 seconds, they had him and he was gone. And we got him out and he was breathing. I thought he was probably dead. We got him in the yard. He was breathing. We started giving him just straight oxygen. We don't breathe straight oxygen. What we're breathing right now is a combination of lots of gases. We're getting him oxygen therapy. We're breathing for him. And another crew showed in with an advanced medic and they took over care and we went back in and put the fire out. But we didn't know if he was going to survive. He's had over 30 skin grafts already.
Wow.
But he's back and he's doing well. He's going to make a full recovery. But to hear him talk about just what he's been through is pretty excruciating.
Do people tend to hide into places like that to kind of put themselves in?
Yes.
Is that common?
It is.
Is there something psychological there?
Yeah, I think it's primal. I think they're just trying to get somewhere where they think I can be protected. And he was protected in the bathroom, but the fire got into the attic, and that's what caused the ceiling to collapse and fall on him. So, you tend to find people usually in closets, bathrooms, or you'll find them right below a window or right at the front door. They'll just collapse on their way to the front door trying to get out.
The best thing you can do in a fire is to get the hell out, right? Just get out as any way you can.
Depending on how advanced it is. So if it's just on your stovetop, throw a blanket on it. Put something on it. Don't throw water.
I mean, if your house is on
the stovetop, and Matt just darts.
Yeah. If you're get
the hell out of here.
If your bed's burning, get the out. Call 911 and get out of there. Yeah. And the other thing too, and we talk about this just in our job. So there's a thing called legacy construction or legacy furniture. And what that means is old building, old furniture. Mm-hmm. That stuff's made out of just like heavy duty fabrics, real wood. But this stuff that we put in our houses today, even our building, the componentry in the ceilings,
it's crap.
It's crap. It's full of plastics. It's full of glues. So it burns 5 times faster and hotter than a legacy construction or legacy products would. Oh, wow. So in the past, something caught on fire. You may have the time to get a fire extinguisher or put it out. But often now the fire grows so fast because of all the chemicals and plastics in the fuel, whatever's burning, it just gets out of hand so quick. But yeah, the best thing always is when in doubt, get out. Like just get out.
Oh, is that a phrase?
I just coined that.
Oh,
when in doubt, get out.
Yeah.
Is stop, drop, and roll
Write a book.
Yeah.
Is stop, drop, and roll still effective?
Oh, yeah.
If you're on fire.
Stop, drop, and roll. Cool water cools a burn. That's another one that we teach kids in the schools. So if you get burned, just run cold water over it for a long, long time.
Robbie, do you have an opinion on worst way to go?
I don't know why my brain just automatically went through like impalement. Like that sounds pretty bad to me. I feel like you've experienced that, right? Not with one of the fire victims, Hayne, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I've been to a lot of people impaled.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
How?
I just watched too much Grey's Anatomy. That's why that came to my head,
Jesus.
I guess.
Yeah. And there's all types of ways that happen.
That's one thing that really messes with me every way possible is just the concept of torture.
Yeah.
Like when I know historical accounts of torture, seeing it depicted on movies, seeing documentaries talk about it, it just messes with me that any human being has to die from torture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'd dwell on it, but it's definitely that would, I guess everybody would be very afraid of that, but I just could not imagine. And there's so many people who've been tortured to death.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And are being tortured right now.
Oh yeah.
That aren't being talked about because they're not famous,
Yeah. Yeah, so true. Something that this is making me think of too, and I think we referenced this maybe a year or two ago, Joey, in an episode, but
Matt's like, "Dadgummit, I thought we were talking about Christian nationalism."
Medical stuff grosses me out.
Speaking of torture,
sorry.
But I took it was a suicide intervention class, but I remember when the class started, the first image the instructor put on her she had a PowerPoint and it came up. It was the image of the falling man from 9/11. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's the dude, he had jumped out of the top of the building and he's upside down, just free falling. And she asked the question, she said, did he commit suicide? It was interesting.
Ooh.
I mean, he willingly jumped out of the window because her point was the prospect of burning to death was a worse death than just falling and splatting and being instantly over. Yeah. So that's what they chose. And she said, you have to understand that people that are thinking through potentially killing themselves, what they're facing internally is a fire like the fire it was behind that gentleman. I never had heard it framed that way. Does that resonate with you, Joey?
As far as it being suicide?
Yeah, just being like, to live is a worse death than dying.
Yeah, I think differently, than most people with Christian faith as far as euthanasia and all this sort of talk. I don't see, I guess from a technical standpoint, you're committing suicide. But to me, if you really look at it, you're just choosing one form of death over another. Right. You're not deciding I'm going to kill myself. So it's, like when I was in my mental health crisis, totally different sort of thing. I wasn't facing death. It was, I'm going to make a choice to kill myself. Whereas that guy that jumped out, he's going to die anyway,
right.
Yeah. And I'm curious, people that were in that building, I have wondered, obviously there were some people that were just incinerated right away, but I wonder if there are people that had to make a quick decision. Either these flames are going to engulf me, like just somebody in the office and they just see, oh my gosh, like did some people have to make a quick decision? Because you see footage of people like kind of hanging out of the windows and they're probably thinking, am I going to have to jump? But I would imagine there are some people they had to make that decision quickly.
Oh, they were getting so hot. I can tell you just from being inside burning buildings, the heat is unbelievable. I think you're right. And it gets so hot so fast. It was like, I just got to go. I got to get out. So Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's lighten this for a bit, because I know Matt. Well, this will get Matt a little bit happier.
Please.
Matt, I'm headed to a labor rally after this.
Hell yeah, brother.
We're excited. We're meeting. City Council's having a big kind of their final meeting for the city's budget, and I'm headed to a labor
I totally thought you were talking about labor as in pregnancy, having a baby. I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Hey, Robbie, you're well aware of the School of the Arts. You're actually planning a reunion for your class. How's that going, by the way?
It's going pretty good. I'm actually really excited. It's been 20 years since I've seen most of them, and which is hard to believe. As we connect with them, it feels like no time has passed. So I'm interested to see what it's going to turn out to be.
So is it fair to say that it's a fairly liberal school with the kids that are there? Would you?
Yeah, I would definitely. Yeah. I would generalize
like
it that way.
There's super conservative Bible Belt Christians who refer to it as SO gay. Have you heard that?
Doesn't surprise me, but for sure. When you look at the list of clubs that the school has, most people are freaked out. So yes.
So just for context, as far as this school, so William, who is an 8th grader at this school, he's now a voice major. I don't know how the connection was made, but they were asked to sing God Bless America at some sort of an event at Charleston Music Hall. So that's like a pretty reputable venue. Like it's a nice place. I didn't know what we were walking into. I probably could have asked some more questions, but Priscilla was helping facilitate. And so her and William, they immediately go where they need to go. Waylon and I, we just decided we're going to walk into the auditorium right now, see what's going on. We walk into basically a lecture. And y'all, this was a lecture. It was a collection of pastors who basically were getting together for some sort of a workshop in how to win back America. So we're basically sitting there amongst very conservative pastors, and I would imagine every single one of them are Trump voters, and there's black and white, and they're all speaking the same sort of language, same sort of lingo. And I'm just thinking, their perspective is all these 7 kids come out and sing God Bless America. They're probably thinking to themselves, oh man, some of these kids still get it. They hold, conservative values, and that, it's just not what's going on. They're like, man, this is an opportunity to sing. But it just sparked so much in me because we had to wait for about an hour and a half. So I'm sitting there listening to the sort of stuff that they're talking about. And it was just so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I wanted to throw out to you guys initially is the whole premise of them getting together was we have to win back America. They stopped at, they did not endorse a particular candidate. They said, we don't encourage pastors to tell people who to vote for. We encourage 2 things. One thing, be registered. So make sure you're registered to vote. And then the second thing is then vote according to your values. But, you hear stuff like, a lot of pastors don't have a backbone and they don't want to talk about anything that rocks the boat. If that's your pastor, you may want to leave the church. We've got to stick up for this and we got to stick up for that. As 3 guys with a significant background in Christian faith, isn't that the wrong, i.e. inaccurate approach to even begin with if you look at the Gospels as far as winning? Like, isn't the very core of our beliefs we win by losing?
Yeah, it's
like
it's power over rather than power under.
Right. Just this attitude of we've got to do something, take control back and assert power to fix things. That's not even Christian to begin with. Right.
It's the opposite of Jesus's life.
I'm curious as to what part of American history just screams Christian or Jesus to anyone.
Yeah. We'll definitely get into that for sure.
Like, is there any piece of it?
Yeah.
I can't think of anything.
And so here's what I've fallen into, though, and it kind of goes along with some of my white privilege, is I will take that and then have somewhat of a hands-off approach to my involvement in a democracy. And that's what I live in. It's like, okay, well, I'm just kind of hands-off completely. And it's been pointed out that I get to do that because certain things aren't going to affect me. Whereas, hey, you have a responsibility. You do live in a democracy. So you do need to vote. You do need to, help other people who don't have the same benefits as you. So that's where I think that I err, but I don't understand how to balance that tension.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like a lot of people, I think that the number of people who don't vote is growing a lot for a lot of different reasons. And so I think that part of it really boils down to your own personal philosophy of, number one, do you believe that it makes a difference or not? Do you believe, like, what is your part in it? Like, for me particularly, I do vote. I don't know if it makes a difference. I hope that it does. I live life through a lens of hope, usually. I try to. And but I also try to do whatever I can, whatever I'm in the power of doing, to be able to help someone else, to help the community and create a better reality for other people, and people that have either been through what I've been through or have similar factors as me, whatever that might be, demographically, career-wise, anything like that. What can I do to help the people after I'm gone?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, would Jesus have said anything differently, or would he have added some things to what he was saying if he lived in a democracy?
I don't think anything would have changed.
Yeah.
I mean, Rome at that time and America at this time are frequently compared for good reason. Like they're very similar states, and they use their power very similarly.
But you wouldn't say that Jesus would have possibly admonished people to get more involved because of how politics affect people?
I think Jesus would tell people to run as far away from this stuff as possible. I think when he said to remove yourself from the world, that is the world. That is a massive representation of what that is. I think the Jehovah's Witnesses are right about that. This politics thing, me personally, I will vote in local stuff because I know the people running. But I mean, national politics, no, I don't really. One, if the vote is sacred, give me someone worthy of it. If it is sacred, I don't think it. I think we obviously don't believe that anymore.
Right.
Or we wouldn't have the two major candidates that we have had for the last few decades.
I feel like voting and politics tend to be the same thing that you get on Instagram and social media. So you get lots of snapshots of people's lives. You get lots of things, the most positive things that they feel like are curated to whatever your values might be. But we haven't had the opportunity to walk with the person, live with the person, see how they operate under stress, see how they make their decisions. And so it's just a blind vote. It's a vote trying to, pick somebody who you think is going to produce, the other thing is, like, if you're just going issues based, it's just such a small barometer to tell what kind of job someone's going to do in the position. So, yeah.
And I mean, on the national level, the issues, the big issues, there have been opportunities for the Democrats to codify Roe v. Wade as the law of the land, but that didn't happen. There have been opportunities for the Republicans to do the exact same opposite. That doesn't happen because those things are valuable as a chess piece.
Yeah, totally.
That they get your vote, but they do not actually care about those things.
They don't want it resolved.
Of course they don't want it resolved. If it's resolved, how are they going to get the church, the pastors to be in their corner, or the Catholic Church to be in their corner on these questions?
Yeah, I'd have to fact check myself, but I'm pretty sure Gore and Clinton, as they were entering politics, they were both Baptists and what we would call pro-life, But because they were going to be in the Democratic Party, they couldn't do that anymore. They had to switch teams when it came to the abortion issue. Yeah. So another thing that I feel, I'm sitting there and I'm like, this just feels so off, and I'm trying not to judge these people, but any hope in the government? It seems like they were basically saying, look, if we can get everybody geared up to vote the right way and to believe the right way, then we can make things better in the government, and then that can change our country. And it's like, there's another one that I don't feel Jesus advocated at all, is hope in the government.
Right.
And what's their
a belief that things can change for the better through government.
And what's their definition of better?
Right.
I mean, seriously, like, what's the definition of better? I mean, and I would love to get your take on this, Robbie, but I know with some of my close Black friends here in North Carolina, for them, the phrase "Make America Great Again" feels racist almost. Like,
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, what do you mean, make it great again? Like when?
Right.
Yeah.
Like going backwards for us is awful.
Right.
It feels
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, the good old days. We need to get back to the good old days when Black people couldn't go to school with white people. Is that the good old days?
Right. Yeah, I heard recently a lot of videos of like, why would you leave America? Our country is the best country in the world, and you could just drive here and see this, and you can drive here and see that. And yeah, I do believe that our country has a lot to see. I think it has a lot of beauty, but there's kind of this perpetuation of a mentality that our country, our perspective, our story, everything about our country is the best. So don't go out and see anything different than what you've been told and what you've experienced. And it creates such a small-minded worldview and perspective on everything else. It just validates what people are already telling themselves, And so they never know any different. And I don't mean this in like a conspiracy way, but when you don't educate yourself, you are able to, you're remaining under control. Like when we talk about the system of the government, there's mass messaging that's happening in order to keep people orderly. And at a certain level, you understand it, because like if you go to a school, there's got to be a principal, there's got to be teachers, there's got to be all that. So if there's no order, if order is out of the window, then it's just complete chaos. You're not reaching your objectives. I get that part of it, but that multiplied by manipulation, rhetoric, negative rhetoric, just all these negative things. That's where I think all the core stuff, that's where all the problems really lie.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a trusted system, then maybe it'd be a different conversation. But
yeah, that manipulation too. And I've read this in a couple of spots. I have not done my homework enough to say that this is for certain, but we've all heard the phrase anti-American. Well, that's anti-American.
Right.
You shouldn't, that's anti-American. And that's like using the word heresy in a church. To my understanding, I've read this 3 different places. There's only one other political entity that uses the word anti. We use anti-America, Russia. It's either anti-Russian or anti-Soviet. Mm-hmm. It's a way to keep herd control, to keep everybody within, politically, or not. Of course, there's different politics, but keep everybody bought in for the cause.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to shame you. We're going to use the word anti to shame you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Have y'all seen the documentary series, The Story of Us? It goes from day one of America, or actually when people were coming over to North America, and it, goes through all the wars and how our, railroads and all. It's fascinating. And it's honestly, it represents why I love America, because they have Black and white representation, celebrities, historians. They're telling a true story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I could not believe. So Tom Brokaw was, what's that say?
This is the untold history of the United States. Get this.
Who's that by?
Oliver Stone and Peter Kuznick. It's thick. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to read that.
If you like what you were just talking about, I think there's a documentary by the same name.
Okay.
So
sweet. Yeah. So Tom Brokaw, he's listen to what he says. So, we call this a Christian nation, and he says literally, someone hits us we don't turn the other cheek. And he's saying this in a braggy way, like not disparaging him, but he's not saying this in a negative way. He says, that's not who we are. And I thought to myself, Jesus says, turn the other cheek. We say we're a Christian nation. And he just said, we don't turn the other cheek. That's not who we are. I thought that was just so profound. Now, I would be fine with saying, let me give y'all some stats. I would be fine with saying that we are a Christian nation when it comes to the religion of Christianity, not the core of Jesus's teachings. 1970, 90% of people in America held to Christianity. 2023, we're down 22% to 68. And then they theorize that in 2070 will be below 50%, which I was surprised. I thought it would be much lower than that. But Hayne, you said something along the lines of, when were we a Christian nation? I hear these sentiments often as like a fear of losing God's favor. Like God's favor is on America and we're straying. And so we're losing his favor. And I think the four of us are thinking the same thing. When did we acquire God's favor?
Favor, in my opinion.
Like when we were running Native Americans out of our country, when we were exploiting human beings with black skin in slavery. Like when was this God's favor?
Favor's been made synonymous with prosperity. We were prosperous. The middle class was huge. And Jesus was a homeless man. But I think that word gets married to, and they wouldn't say it, but the favor of God, that's what you mean. You're talking about prosperity. Like you've lived comfortably, you've had money, things have been, and that's a very white thing also. I mean, if we're being really honest, for folks to use that kind of language that we had God's favor. What do you mean by that? Well, my life was good. Things were good for me.
It is interesting when we don't feel like life is going well, we feel like we don't have the favor of God. Yeah. When essentially we still do.
11 of the 12, apostles were all murdered. Like these were the people that were closest to Christ. No one's guaranteed any prosperity. That's just not part of the gig. Christ himself was murdered by the empire. Yeah. So
I think you're guaranteed. I think that's part of the thing is prosperity is the thing you actually are guaranteed not to have if you're following that path. Spot on.
Yep. I agree.
That is the one thing you can be sure you'll give up.
Yep.
If you become a Christian.
If you are given anything, you recognize that those gifts are from the Lord and it's with his purpose. So generally speaking, that would be in opposition of politically, how we spend our money, how we spend our resources, and all of that too. I think most of it is just modeled so poorly. And so when you say, Joe, you said, would Jesus say anything differently? I kind of agreed with Matt. I don't think he would say anything differently because I think back then they were missing the point of what he was saying. And I think still today we miss the point of what he was saying as well. And so I think practically speaking, if we would become more of an empathic and compassionate people, then that would change the way that our systems were run. Like if we actually cared about the people in the country and we say that we will love our neighbor or love everyone, then that would actually inform our actions. So instead, we go with more of like an assimilation model where we say, we love you and we love you so much that we're going to tell you that you need to change to this so that way you fit within that model of love that we have for you because we know what's best for you. And so we're going to do that. So that way, one day you're going to wake up and you're going to realize that what I've been forcing you to do is better for you. And I don't think that that's the way that Jesus even approached it. I think people were inspired and people were awakened to him, and that changed the way that they lived. And so here in America, it's more about systems and marketing, mass communication. And we coin terms like relationship, but just because we say the word doesn't actually mean that, that we're depicting it, that we're living it out or communicating it effectively. I think that communicating it effectively is being the hands and feet Communicating it effectively is actually coming alongside people that are suffering and actually doing something to help them. And the list of people that are doing that within the church and outside of the church is very small percentage of pastors. I just saw this Instagram reel that this guy said, I got kicked out of my church. My pastor told me not to come back. And he said, I saw him on the side of the road. And I said, hey, pastor, so sorry. Did you need help? And he said, yeah, I need help. He had a flat tire. And he said, okay, come pray with me real quick. And he said, God, I pray that you send help to him in Jesus' name. And he said, all right, well, I'll see you later and you have a great day. And he said, but then he got mad and he kicked me out of the church and told me not to come back. And he said, well, that's what you do for me every single week.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was kind of a funny video, but it was like so true. It's so true. It's like, okay, we as the body of believers, we should be the hands and feet. We should be having the action that's happening in the world that would bring the actual fruit, which is what Jesus talked about, which is love, healing, safety, wholeness, you know, all those things. But we don't see it because nobody's doing it. Not nobody, but like a smaller percentage of people are doing that.
Yeah, I don't think that the word Christian means anything anymore. Like if there were, the stats say there are 210 million people who call themselves Christians in this country. And I think if that were true, the country would look different.
Yeah.
If we were truly Christians, is what you're saying.
Yeah. If Christianity meant anything, if saying I'm a Christian actually held any weight or meant anything, the country would look different. The world would look different.
Sure. Yeah.
Entirely different.
Yeah. We don't have a world full of, you know, it's not Christianity more than it's just Christendom, which is the combination of Christ and power, kingdom.
Things that cannot be combined are combined.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've been challenging myself to just say, surprisingly enough, I don't always do this, but to say exactly what I'm thinking. And I think this could ruffle some feathers, and I could be wrong. So at this little convention, to wrap it up, they closed in prayer and I bowed my head, and it hit me. This is just my context. I have to believe that these people are, I believe, in error with their sort of posture that we've just been discussing, but they have enough of the same faith that I have for me to still say, we are all praying together. It was almost like a sacred moment of, Lord, now we're all turning our attention to you. And so you're responsible for how we're all thinking, almost like I commit them to you, Lord. But when we prayed, I believe the same God heard us, and they are trying to do what they think is best.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they're praying to the same God you pray to?
Yes.
I don't have an answer for that. I'm just curious.
I just think it's interesting because one question to ask is, did they invite people who didn't want to participate in the prayer to leave the room?
Nope.
Yeah. So that's the part for me, I think, is I don't think there's anything wrong with praying, but I think coming from, you know, a Christian perspective, well, not a Christian perspective, but someone who, I'm a Christian. So like, for me, I feel like if you're in a room and you're forcing other people who don't believe like you believe to be in the room while you're praying to God, like most people think that it's some sort of an evangelistic measure or something like that. The Holy Spirit's going to touch them or whatever, but you're forcing them to do that. There's no choice in the matter. And so the problem never seems like a problem until the script is flipped. Because if somebody else prayed from a different religion in that room, all of the Christians would have a major problem with it. Not to make it a light joke, but kind of the same thing as like I was joking about, you know, watching Harry Potter. Like I'm just reading Harry Potter right now because, you know, I took classes on how evil it was growing up, you know, so like, so I'm just finally reading it, you know, as an adult. And, but you know, like the rhetoric and all of that stuff, it's like the Christians would have been very upset if somebody prayed to a different God in that room. That would not have been allowed. And then that's when the Christian nationalism would come in and say, well, this is a Christian country. Then we can do this, you know?
Yeah. And how was that? I was doing a little digging just with Christian nationalism. I was curious about the phrase, and it was interesting. I started digging. I had a conversation with my dad recently, and my dad said, I've never heard of that phrase before. I'm like, really? He goes, no. So I started digging a little bit deeper. The phrase was coined in 2015. It was kind of when the whole Trump thing was beginning. That's when we first saw it.
Wow.
And it wasn't
that Kristen Dumez that started that?
I wrote some things down. I don't know if I wrote that name down, but that's when it kind of.
That's around when she wrote that book.
I think that's right, 2015. But it was not Christian nationalism. The actual phrase was white Christian nationalism, not Christian nationalism, which was kind of interesting. But there's 6 tenets. This was from Whitehead and Perry, who were 2 authors who wrote a book in 2020 called Taking America Back for God, Christian Nationalism in the United States. And they identified 6 tenets that embodies what they would say is a white Christian nationalist. Well, I guess you have to be white, but they didn't put that in there. A Christian nationalist. That you would declare the United States a Christian nation, that you would advocate Christian values, that you would enforce strict separation of church and state. You would allow the display of religious symbols in public places. Sorry. And allow for prayer in public schools. And finally, the success of the United States is part of God's plan. And
it's part of God's plan. The success of the United States is part of God's plan.
Yeah. So I'm just
that's blasphemy. I mean, come on.
But I'm just so tickled at every single statement. But the enforced strict separation of church and state. It's the antithesis of all the other things that they've listed.
Things, yeah.
Exactly. And that over half, they believe that, let's see, what did I write down? 54% of Americans in 2022 had never heard the phrase Christian nationalism, and only 45% who had, 5% viewed themselves that way. Half the country doesn't even know what this is. Like, it's not even a phrase, it's in their lexicon, which is kind of interesting. But those that are, I just find it so interesting. Of course, those statements, those 6 tenets, some of them are downright anti-Christian for me. But then the strict separation of church and state, when has that ever happened? I mean, the Puritans came here looking for religious freedom, looking to found a Christian nation, so to speak. Like, when has there ever been a separation of church and state? I feel like it just gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
So true.
If you guys were getting to know someone on a plane or wherever, a party, and you're thinking to yourself, "Oh man, this person's pretty cool. This ain't bad," and somehow they say something supportive of Donald Trump, as we hope that he gets elected in 2024, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I hear that shit every day.
Yeah. What happens in your mind? Is there like that's who you are? Because I feel like I almost have to be, I live in the South. Hayne, you would consider yourself growing up in the South. Robbie, sure. Matt, you're in the deep, deep South. I find it almost something I have to be apologetic of, and I don't want to be. I don't feel like I have to be, but there are people, for sure family, but there are people that I'm not even family with that I have a real fondness for that would consider themselves Trumpers. Like people that I love deeply. And I would even go so far as to say, and obviously I'm not getting into the deeper weeds philosophically of good and evil, but I would even go so far to say, those are good people. Those are, they'd give you the shirt off their back sort of thing. Yeah. That's, our society is not wanting to do that anymore. I've actually heard someone, argue against that. Like, well, wait a second. If somebody votes for Trump, this is who they are. But it's just way more nuanced than that. You've got some people who are single issue voters, and they just see it as, well, I don't know who to vote for. I'll vote for the one who is anti-abortion because that's my responsibility. But I don't know. You guys in that scenario, does your mind completely change when you hear?
Not for me, not at all. I'm surrounded by it. One thing it's taught me is that people are people, and they really do. They think that they have the best intentions. And honestly, if you talk with them, which I do a lot of, you'll find out that most of them are just mad at the system. They think the system is broken, and they think Trump is like a wild card enough to maybe fix it. That gives us something to start on. I think the system is broken too. And everybody in this room thinks the system's broken, or maybe that it's working as it was designed even, which is what I would say. So we have common ground there. So there's a lot to build on just from that. And I think very few people just love Trump because he represents white nationalism or white supremacy even. Mm-hmm. I think he does for a lot of people. But I think ultimately he represents anti-status quo because people are very unhappy. Another telling sign is I used to see those fucking red hats everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
People are too ashamed to wear them now.
It's true.
They are embarrassed. Most people around here do not wear them anymore.
Really?
And yeah. And one guy who brought it up to me when I was sitting in the coffee shop, he was wearing the hat and he was just like, "You want to say anything?" I was like, "Nah, I'll let you kind of, you've said it all yourself."
Why did he say that?
Your hat says it all, bro.
Because he knows me.
Oh, he knew you.
He knows
okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was a friendly jab.
I thought it was a stranger.
No. I mean, we don't know each other well, but I just said, no, you kind of said it yourself, and he doesn't wear it anymore, He stopped wearing that shit. And that's true for a lot of people around here.
Yeah, I don't have, it's not a lack of respect for people. I think I don't have a lot of respect for how one evaluates people if the following isn't considered. And that's how someone typically, or I would say how someone honestly and genuinely got to the belief that they're at, arrived at the belief that they're at. Like if you're not evaluating someone and taking that into high consideration, I don't really have a whole lot of respect for your judge of people if you're not taking that in consideration. And I don't think that ignorance is an excuse, but what kind of allowances do you guys make on the basis of ignorance? Again, not excusing actions, but do you take it in consideration as far as how you feel about someone's heart, I guess?
Right. Yeah, but that's the way that we view relationships, especially those of us who have worked in more of a pastoral role. We have a high view of like the heart and values of a person versus like their actions and things like that, and so that's something that I had to realize, honestly, and I honestly only realized it the past few years because it's, for me, I'm always like, well, this is a good person, or like I'm always thinking of that when a lot of people, that's not even on their radar about what kind of person this is. They're thinking, oh, this person is pro-life. And how could you not be pro-life? How could there ever be a situation where you're not pro-life when voting for Trump? For me, I just see so many other nuances. Yeah, number one, I feel like, not to be like blatant about my opinion, but I don't really think that he's a great person. Not that I'm saying that somebody else is a great person, but personally speaking, like I think that there's so much manipulation. I think that there's so much deception that to me, it feels so predictable that it feels like everybody is brainwashed. Oh, we need Christian voters. So now I'm going to do a shot with the Bible and I'm going to do, and it's like, so we're going to do a shot with the Bible, but then we're going to get into all these trials about this and this and this and this and this. And it's like all of that is just ignored because he had the one shot with the Bible. It was just, it's the same thing with like somebody was talking about Justin Bieber and one of his old pastors or something like that. And I said, Carl Lentz. They were talking about Carl Lentz. And I was like, it's so crazy to me. I've led worship for like 30 years, something like that. Yeah, about 30 years. The one time that Justin Bieber sings, "I Could Sing of Your Love Forever," all of a sudden, he's the number one worship leader. He's one of the number one voices. And it's like, nobody has considered the fact that he has just started his journey into this life that he is claiming. And so now he's a credible source. He's, the one that everybody needs to go to. And and a lot of it has to do with his fame. A lot of it has to do with, whatever.
They just want the Biebs on their team.
Right. And it's like a lot of people make their decisions based off of frivolous factors. Yeah. Instead of considering the person as a whole, their journey, their experience. I just wish Obama would come back personally.
Amen. Hey, are you guys familiar? So, on Jesus' crucifixion, there's Barabbas. And are you guys familiar with the Barabbas character, like who he really was?
I mean, there's I think he's got a whole gospel.
Yeah, it's a whole thing, connected to him. But his name was Jesus Barabbas, but we just think of it as his name was Jesus. It was Jesus Barabbas. But Jesus Barabbas, this isn't a perfect, parallel, but Jesus Barabbas was kind of a William Wallace character to the Jewish people. And
what's that? Okay.
William Wallace, Braveheart, kind of the whole, you know, to the Roman Empire, he was a terrorist, but to the Jewish people, he was a freedom fighter, and he had committed atrocities, but he was this biggest, baddest, this big bad dude.
I love for a second, Hayne forgot that Robbie was black. He just said William Wallace, assuming that everybody knew.
I'm taking notes over here. I'm like, I need to look.
Oh, man.
You know William Wallace.
Braveheart movie. Yeah. Oh, that's great. But yeah, so Pontius Pilate gave everybody the choice. He gave the Jews the choice. Who do you want? You guys want Jesus Barabbas? You want your William Wallace? You want the biggest, baddest guy I can give you? Or do you want this person that embodies love and is preaching a message that's could keep you in this persecuted state,
Yeah, right.
And they asked for Barabbas. They wanted the biggest, baddest guy to give them back their culture, to give them back what they wanted.
Dang, that's interesting.
And it feels so much like this white Christian nationalism with, if the choice was Christ, no, you didn't choose Jesus. You chose Barabbas. You chose a guy that aligned himself, with your values enough, but you wanted the biggest, baddest dude you thought, because you were so pissed, to vote him into office to hope that he'll free you, that he'll give you what you want.
Right.
And history just keeps playing itself over and over and over again.
I love the rhetoric of, how dare you rebel against your own country? And I'm thinking, how do you think this country was birthed? Crying out,
it's nothing but rebellion.
What are you even talking about?
Yeah, those guys were terrorists. They were terrorists to the British Empire. Not the British Empire was anything worth, writing home. I mean, not writing home. Anything. They weren't smelling like roses themselves, but those guys were terrorists.
Yeah.
But
I thought a lot about what I experienced sitting there listening, and this occurred to me that I feel like I have not arrived when it comes to my capacity for love, but I do feel like I learned the sort of love that Jesus calls us for. And I feel like I learned it while I was very evangelical and very conservative in my beliefs. I learned love then. My capacity has grown, but as my Christian beliefs have turned towards, I would say, way more liberal context. But what I learned as a very evangelical conservative Christian still applies. I feel like that is something that's a consistent thread, which to me, when I parceled that out in my mind, that's when I thought, man, there is hope. If we all learned what true love is, then we can figure out how to come together. I really do see my journey as I have shifted majorly in my beliefs and how I have seen the world, but my desire and motivation to love was established when I believe very differently, and that hasn't changed.
Right.
Right. I think to love well too means it goes hand in hand as you're a person of forgiveness. It's easy to say, well, I can love, but if you're truly loving, I mean, speaking I've been married now for 20 years. If you're truly loving, you're also forgiving all the time. That even when someone's against you or says something you don't agree with or hurts your feelings, that act of love is often just forgiveness and the capacity to say, you know what, I was wrong, or we can I love you. I just think that forgiveness piece is something that we all could desperately use more of, particularly with the election coming up and these conversations that we're having. We preach a lot about love, but love at its core is forgiveness at the same time. And to get to those spaces, I think about
that's so interesting. Yeah, I say that too. Forgive well and forgive often, because that is such a hard lesson to learn. It's a hard lesson to practice, because it is about your pride. It is about you being hurt. It is about a lot of those things, and it causes you to, in Joey's words, turn the other cheek. It causes you to...
Those are Jesus's words, but I'll take
it. Joey's words by way of Jesus. And
Joey Jesus. Jesus Joey. Jesus Barabbas, Jesus Joey.
Yes. And, but yeah, so it causes you to go past your offense to see something bigger, a bigger purpose, and at some point we have to grow past our primal instinct of eye for an eye,
totally.
You did something to me, I'm going to do something back to you, and, like when you have little kids, it's all day long, like literally it's all day long. Either they're doing something to you or they're doing something to each other. And you're having to walk through this like reconciliation, this thing. But because of your love for them and because you're thinking years and years down the line, you're trying to give them these tools so that way they can experience healing and live a more fulfilled life. I think I agree with you, Hayne. Forgiveness is a huge key.
And I want to be very clear. I am not here even close to the majority of the time, but I think there's those spaces where I really do feel like I'm living out of a real love. And when I am in those spaces, which are few and far between, I wish they were more often, I feel like I'm nearly unoffendable. I just don't get offended. Something said, it just doesn't offend me, because if I'm living in that space, there's no ego. The ego is or the capital E ego, the lowercase ego is important. That's what keeps us that's what keeps us running out of burning buildings and getting burned. Self-protection. But that uppercase ego that is just it's full of hubris and so connected to my pride, when that ego is just so far in the back, I just don't tend to get offended. Whatever happens just happens, and I just move on. And man, this just feels very convicting for me moving into this election season, to be like, okay, I need to get involved. I need to find those practices that get me in those spaces, because I think it's gonna be really easy to get offended quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I feel like I could be deeply connected. I feel like I am deeply connected. I honestly, most of my close relationships with people outside of family would not be Trump supporters, but the very few people that I am deeply connected with as a friend who are Trump supporters, they have the same sort of desire and motivation to figure out love and humility and unity. And I feel like, for lack of better words, that's the team that I'm on. I'm on the team of love, regardless of your religious affiliation, regardless of your political beliefs, regardless of how offensive your beliefs may be to me. I can be on your team if you are trying to love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Matt, I think, what you articulated as far as your circumstances, your surroundings, and, just that you quickly answered the question about being friends with someone who votes for Trump. That's like your life where you live. That's everybody. You don't really have a choice. Either have
to be a hermit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not probably going to be intimately close to anyone like that. I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time around that person, but as far as like associate with or have a conversation with, or even like do something for them if they're in need, like that, I don't think there's much that would keep me from doing that, that I see real people doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, most people are just, they really all have, there's usually a common thread of just frustration. And if you can say, yeah, me too, that really can help you have a conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a good way also. If I can say, yeah, me too, and let me tell you the perspective I'm coming from, it can help people also see things from other people's perspective. So, and have more empathy for other people who are also having a very hard time right now.
Yeah.
Like we're all struggling, and that's just the truth.
Yeah. Who's the next president of the United States?
It's Kendrick for me. But, oh yeah. Let's talk about that. Kendrick or Drake?
Here's what's funny is with Kendrick Lamar, who I admire a lot and whose artistry is just phenomenally amazing. I'll say that I don't have a whole lot of knowledge on the Drake Kendrick stuff. My sons talk about it a lot, especially William. But that, to me, I say those guys in 20 years are going to look back on this and kind of roll their eyes at themselves, just like Nas and Jay-Z do today, because they had the same stuff going on 25 years ago, and now they laugh about it. I wouldn't say it makes me lose respect, because I understand doing things that, are, gosh, I'm trying not to sound pompous and arrogant, but doing or saying things out of just being younger. To me, I'm like, stop it. Just
are they youth
music.
though?
What's that?
Are they youth though?
No, they're like our age, aren't they?
No,
they're like in their
Kendrick.
30s.
I will say, guys, I will say though, I know and work with 40, 50, 60-year-old boys.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they never grew up.
Yeah.
They aged, but they never emotionally, consciously grew up.
You know, the thing is, too, it's like, this is all surface stuff. Like,
yeah, Kendrick's 36. Y'all are right.
Yeah, if you think about it, like, there's always a feud. In the music industry, there's always a feud. And most of it has to do with...
Sells records.
It sells records. They're going irrelevant. They needed something to stir the pot. Because it was Nicki Minaj and Cardi B. It was Eminem and Mariah Carey.
It's kind of like wrestling. It's a little bit like wrestling.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
It's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
But either way, I still Kendrick.
You get into it, you know. It's like
I got so into this thing. I was watching so many reaction videos because Kendrick is just, I love Kendrick. If it had been any other people, I wouldn't care. Yeah. But I really like Kendrick. He's really smart, and I don't know, he's just cool.
Yeah.
He's cool. I mean, he's accusing Drake of some bad shit. And if it's true,
what if it was like Lecrae and Andy Mineo?
I don't even know who they are. I know who Lecrae is,
really
but that would be funny. What if, it should be like the Calvinists versus the Arminians on Christian rap battle. That's brilliant.
Worship edition.
Yeah. Christian rap battle sounds great.
Oh, Matt, the expression you just made was priceless.
Because of that brilliant idea?
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, that's $1 billion.
The way that your face looked was like, cha-ching, like a light bulb went above.
Yeah, it was like, holy crap, that's brilliant. I need to learn claymation now.
Robbie, we have an upcoming conversation. We planned on having it, but then we started talking about other stuff and ran out of time. But in the future, we'll release an episode of Stoy Prelo learning about Calvinism for the very first time in his life. He has no reference points of Calvinism, and we're going to teach him it on air and hear what he thinks.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Well, make sure you let him know that I'm in that Calvinist atheist camp. That'll add some extra